Well, it was in the city, on the outskirts of the city. It's like so you're still pretty close to like you're in the city still.
Hello, everybody. My name's Tony. For those who didn't just hear that person say hi, Tony. And I am not your host tonight. I am just going to do the announcements here, and then we have a guest host because we have a guest curator. So, Bosso Poetry Group, or Poetry Company, is the one that did the show tonight. It's all their poets. And so they're going to do that. But first, I have to tell you, we are a show that's put on by the League of Minnesota Poets, and more specifically, the local chapter, which is Cracked Walnut. And if you have any questions about Cracked Walnut or the League of Minnesota Poets, you can go to crackedwalnut.com. You can go to mnpoets.org. Those are your two main places. There are cards for Cracked Walnut as well as Poets and Pints on the table. So please look into it if you're a poet, if you know a poet. Speaking of which, if you know a poet, on the back of the cards that are on your table, it tells you how to be on the show if you know a poet or are a poet. There is no audition. You basically sign up, and at some point I put you on the stage. Several people in this room have been on the stage because they did that same thing. So I'm not going to talk your ear off because I am going to welcome to the stage your actual host for the evening. Irene, please come to the stage.
Good evening, I'm Irene, and welcome to the 99th edition of Poets and Pints. Thanks to Tony, our ever-resourceful host and curator of the series, Sisyphus Brewing, for offering their space, special guests, and all of you here tonight. Please buy some refreshments, remember your server, and be generous when the tip jar comes around. Tonight, the Bosso Poetry Company is here, as Tony said, and we present two of our founding favorites, Lynette Reini-Grandell and Scott Vetsch, as well as two guests who have appeared at Bosso in the past, Marjorie Buettner and Ibe Kaba. You can catch Bosso Poetry the first Wednesday of the month at the 331 Club in Minneapolis from 9:30 until midnight. Drink some coffee before you go, show up late to work the next day. For the backstory on Bosso, please talk to Scott or Lynette at intermission and they can tell you some more of the history. So we all probably wrote a haiku in grade school, but we may be a little foggy on Haibun. That's our cue to welcome our first reader tonight, Marjorie Buettner, a Pushcart-nominated, award-winning haiku, tanka, and Haibun poet who has been published widely. She was an editor for Contemporary Haibun Online, taught haiku and tanka at the Loft, and presented workshops throughout Minnesota. Her collection of Haibun, Some Measure of Existence, published by Dragonfly Press, won first place in the 2015 Mildred Canterman Book Awards and was nominated for the Minnesota Book Awards. Her other collection, Seen It Now, features haiku and tanka. Let's bring Marjorie to the stage. Here she is.
Okay, this is a big step.
Oh, I got there's a thing. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, thank you.
Now it's less.
I might fall on the way down. Thanks for having me, Irene and Tony. I appreciate it. This is exciting for me. I haven't read poetry in front of an audience for about 2 years. In the 90s, I purchased a book that changed my life. It was called The Japanese Haiku by Kenneth Yasuda. And actually, haiku is a one-breath poem, a poem which I realized after reading the Japanese haiku that I've been trying to write forever. Writing haiku and the enjoyment of it comes intuitively rather than logically. It is akin to painting or sketch. What is not there is important as what is there. 17 syllables is a traditional format, but I adhere to the short, long, short dictate. I'll give you a sample example. Dark of the moon, the flavor of the hive in the honey. I'm also enthralled with tanka, which is a Japanese 5-line poem, and the syllabic count is 57577. The Diditsu, which is a Japanese 4-line poem, the Gazelle, an Arabic ode of 5 or more couplets, and the Sijo, a Korean poem of 3 lines, very long, consisting of 44 to 46 syllables. But the one form that I absolutely love is the haiban. My recent haiban, Unremembered, was taken up by a video poem by Pat van Berkel. He's from the Netherlands, and he did a remarkable job videoing the haiban that I wrote. And this is, I just would like, before I read from my book, I'll read you a sample of what I wrote for him. Unremembered. My mother's hands smelled brown, strong. They calmed me. My hands smell of restless sleep. Nightly they dream of me, jealously, smelling hands, always. The secret scent of fingers. Daily I wake with hands asleep. They do not remember me. Summer's end, flicking the beetles off the rose petals. So in this instant, prose poem for the haiban, and then you either end with a haiku or a tanka.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's good.
It's
better.
It keeps slipping down. I might have to
Yeah.
get a new stand.
This is a haiban that I wrote for my husband, who is here tonight. Yielding to the willow. Yield to the willow, all the loathing and desire of your heart. And that's from Bosso. One of my favorite haiku by Bosso is a love poem, remarkable and insistent, documenting an inner relationship with nature. It has what the Japanese calls sabi, translated at times as the sigh of the moment. It is a sigh that touches our hearts as readers, writers, and lovers of poetry. I have an ancient willow tree by the lake's edge with 2 massive trunks that start from deep in the ground and then bend over a quiet wild iris spot. This willow was rescued by my husband, who cropped the weeds around it and cut off the dead wood. He dug a drainage bed nearby to take the rainwater to the lake. There is a deep shade under the willow branches, deep and quiet. This sort of earnest care goes deeper than maintenance, for it touches all the love of nature that my husband has in his heart and all the loathing of difficult tasks that need to be accomplished in order to work, in order to improve our environment. I read Bosso's haiku and think of him on the tractor cutting a road to the lake or cultivating the beds for our garden to plant rows of apple, apricot, and plum trees, along with lilac, cherry, hazelnut, and cranberry bushes. This journey to cultivate our garden is, in a sense, a cultivation of the self. This morning, while I weeded, I listened for the morning dove's call, realigning the world, and in a perfect stillness, it came to me. Pilgrim, pilgrimage, and the way are all but myself toward myself. A quotation by Farid Uddin Attar. As if we could change our lives. Summer moon. I'll read a few Ibe from my book, which was published in 2014.
Just so you don't have to fight this anymore.
Okay. Do you want me to hold it instead?
Just hold this for 1 second. This will
Okay.
take. Sorry, everybody.
My editor was Scott King, who died a couple years ago through Red Dragon. He edited Red Dragonfly Press, and both my books are published by him.
Okay, so this one's a lot longer. There we go.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hidden exchange. This morning I adjust to the rhythm and things. Slow, unwinding sun rolls off the day. We turn, antennas tune to a hidden exchange. Bach knew with his concerto and Satie too. The sparrow's unnamed cry, the music of mornings, mute, light-bound, bent to an inner strain, traced across the sky like the colored stain in a window's glass made to need the sun. Morning light, the shape of birdsong carried by wind. What the morning brings. This morning is pure with tree wind and one morning dove song filling those empty, long abandoned places within, while this old boat, tethered too long, awash in a golden light from a just risen sun, is untied, set adrift in whatever the morning brings. Floating lily pads, the oars of the boat set aside. Dust of light. In ancient times, wandering poets carried poet bags to store poems and artwork for showing. Bosso carried the stars and the moon on his back and so much desire. If I die tonight, bury my poems with me so that I can pay the ferryman to take me to the other shore. Dust of life, yet how beautifully the motes take on the sun. The offering. It must be the dance of the long prairie grass that I miss the most, how it bends and sways to the changing wind, rippling and quivering at each gust. Sometimes someone said the prairie is a sea of grass as movable and mutable as the ocean, changing color in the shift of the sun and clouds. Today, I can almost hear it sing in the wind as each blade brushes against the other. Gust of wind, the underside of wildflowers offered up. Some measure of existence. Watching monarch butterflies circle, I pick up stones heated by the late afternoon sun. Their warm weight gives the moment some measure of existence, which dares to go beyond time. That part of the lake where loon calls echo, autumn loneliness. And finally, I hope I'm not over too long. Abandoned houses. My dreams are abandoned houses which let the gold of afternoon light filter in through open windows. There you will find birds nesting in the open rafters and raccoons in the walls. A pump well in the backyard has dried up long ago, becoming a prop now for wildflowers, and the swing on the front porch is pushed by wind alone. If you are tired, you can rest your body in a field of sunflowers and watch their faces follow the sun. There you can breathe deeply and shed the dust of your days, breathing in, too, the scent of a distant lake. You can almost see the bubbles rise up where the fishes feed. Gate ajar, a vine of morning glories winding around itself. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is the hot spot. And let's have another round of applause for Marjorie. It's our pleasure to present Lynette Reini-Grandell, who wrote the much talked about memoir, Wild Things, a Transglam Punk Rock Love Story, published by the Minnesota Historical Press this year. She also authored 2 poetry collections published by Holy Cow Press, Wild Verge and Approaching the Gate, winner of the 2015 Northeastern Minnesota Book Award for Poetry. Other work has appeared in various journals. She's been nominated for a pushcart and received grants from the Finlandia Foundation and the Minnesota State Arts Board. In addition to Bosso poetry, Lynette also performs with the jazz poetry collective Sonoglyph. Her work is often inspired by Finnish folk culture and song. She lives in Minneapolis on the ancestral homeland of the Dakota people. Let's welcome Lynette Reini-Grandell.
Okay. I asked the Facebook if I should read poetry or from the memoir, and everybody said both. So I'm going to read one poem, if I can find it. This is actually from my first book. Yes, page 10. And then I'll read from the memoir, and we'll see if I can stay within the time. This poem is called Radio Girls. Radio girls want to fall asleep with someone singing in their ears. Radio girls all developed huge crushes on David Bowie, and some never got over it. Radio girls are nearly inconsolable. Radio girls would rather go blind than remove their earbuds. Radio girls say, "Dream crusher, what have you done for me lately?" Radio girls shout syllables rapidly into the microphone, shocking their lips and channeling Patti Smith. Radio girls have dark circles under their eyes, but it might be from smeared mascara. Radio girls sit on curbs and scowl because they're too shy to start conversations. Radio girls need to get off their asses and finish that novel about the yellow brick road. Radio girls are on a road which is uncharted, but radio girls work with deliberate care to arrange the right soundtrack that will follow them everywhere. Yet radio girls do not have free hearts. They are leashed to their hearts, and when they see their hearts walking up the sidewalk, one of them turns sideways under the overhang and closes a door without looking back once. Okay, so keeping track of the time here. Wild Things. This is the story of my relationship and now 40-year marriage to Venus to Mars, who's sitting here. And it covers a lot of historical territory. Therefore, it was Minnesota Historical Society Press. So the first section I'm going to read to you takes place in 1998. The band is going to be playing in New York City for the first time, kind of for the first time. It's complicated. But anyway, so I'll read a few paragraphs of that and then I'll kind of segue into the next. I want to read some band stuff because we've been talking the last few days about band stuff. It just feels like it's in the air. So the band, All the Pretty Horses, if you don't know already. The band played Meow Mix, a lesbian club on East Houston made semi-famous by the movie Chasing Amy. When I walked in the door, I did a double take. The place looked so much bigger in the film. In reality, it was the size of most New York clubs, a small box, but I had been operating on a Midwestern scale where most buildings sprawl. By the way, I think it's maybe smaller than this room. The bartender wasn't working yet, so I sat at a table near the center and waited for an indication of how I might assist. Band setup time was often awkward for me. Steve, oh, I forgot. So at this point in the book, I'm calling Venus Steve. The Venus name hadn't been created yet, and it's complicated, which a little bit of this I'll get into. Okay, so sorry about that, honey. Okay, Venus, formerly known as Steve, was usually frantic trying to hoist the equipment and plug everything in. I wanted to help, but he, and by the way, I'm still using old pronouns too. Sorry about that, honey. It's history, okay. To do it all by himself rather than find the words to explain what needed to be done. Leanne, the bass player, was also very grim and terse, so I went over to see if Tiffany, who was their backup singer-dancer, needed anything as she duct-taped a Teletubby, the purple Tinky Winky, to her mic stand. She was usually calm during setup time. Kevin Meisler and Emily Hooper, who normally go-go danced with the band in Minneapolis, appeared and went to the stage to see if there'd be enough room for them. They were staying with Emily's family on Long Island. They planned to dance and play with the lights from either the stage or the floor. When the bartender appeared, a lithe butch woman in a mohawk, I got everyone their drinks. I'm so useful. The band launched with a rousing version of Tattoo and kept going. The crowd, initially sparse, quickly grew and soon crowded the stage. Jendine, the drummer, in her leopard print dress and wig of cascading blonde curls, was a powerhouse drummer. Leanne radiated her usually snarling, chilly demeanor, and Tiffany, Emily, and Kevin provided the glitz and action. But for me, Steve was the total star of the set, commanding the stage with his height, Cleopatra eyeliner, and deep, resonant voice. Near the end of the set, he sank to his knees, punching out the guitar chords, then did a back bend straight into the ground, leaning back a few moments while he raked the strings, then popped back up. Near the end of the last song, he went down on his knees again for a variation of the back bend, this time rolling onto his shoulders, guitar still across his chest, and bicycled his legs in the air. Then he rolled back up and directed the final power chords. Wild cheers burst from the audience. Steve came up to me and smiling and sweaty, black lipstick blurred by the mic, and gave me a big sloppy kiss. They'd done it. The bartender, now that she'd seen them perform, was eager to talk and signed to us from down the bar how much she liked the show. She was Barb Morrison, a multi-instrumental musician who became a friend soon and would eventually be Steve's producer. Already she was helping him plan an August trip to New York. The band would return to Meow Mix and also play a cameo on the narrow stage of Mother, which is another nightclub there. Okay, then I'm gonna skip to another New York City performance. Oh heavens, I thought I marked this. Oh no. Okay. Okay. Oh my goodness, I don't know what happened to my Post-it note. Okay. I'll just do this section then. Sometime after those, this is now 1999, Minneapolis and New York City. Sometime after those first few trips to New York, Steve came home from rehearsal and said everyone in the band had decided to take stage names. Ed and Matt had already phased out of the band, Ed grudgingly. He asked me, these were alternative drummer, bass player, and drummer. Ed asked me once if I thought he was being pushed out because Leanne looked better than him, and I said no, because I didn't want to stir up trouble. But I knew he was right. She was tall, slim, with long red dreadlocks and dark lipstick, a little scary but alluring at the same time, like poison ivy in the Cramps. She fit perfectly. The stage names were Tiffany's idea, Steve explained. Tiffany would be called Johnny Cakes, the love alien. Brett was already going by Jendine when she dressed as a woman, so she chose that name. It was her grandmother's name. Leanne chose the name Pandora, and Steve would go by Venus. Okay, whatever. I found it a bit amusing and also ironic. Steve was so busy trying to promote the band, rehearse, and perform that sometimes it seemed the only time we could make love was after a show. Putting all his money into the band also didn't strike me as particularly loving. The goddess of love, huh? I gave him a light squeeze. Well, you know, Steve smiled. It does seem a little weird. Why not Aphrodite? That's a nicer sounding name. I like Venus. Yeah, and you know what it rhymes with. I don't have to call you that, do I? No, of course not. This response would prove to be an error. So I'll just read a little bit more of the same chapter because I've got some more minutes here. I don't know where the part is that I was going to read. I lost the Post-it note. Okay, it made sense to call Jendine by that name because she presented as femme most of the time now and preferred it. She dressed as a man only once or twice a week to lead the Wolverines Classic Jazz Orchestra, which she and her parents had founded. Also, the name didn't have any stagey pretensions. To me, the other names were completely theatrical, something to put on a marquee, devoid of intimacy. Steve started to come home after rehearsals, telling me what everyone had done that night, using the names Pandora and Jendine, so within a couple of weeks I got used to thinking of them by those names. But he rarely called Tiffany Johnny Cakes, and so no one got in the habit of using it. When talking with new fans, sometimes I use the name Venus to avoid confusion. All non-band friends and relatives, including myself, still use the name Steve. I was free to go to New York during spring break, so Steve booked gigs for a week in March. Everyone wanted to go to New York now. A new drummer named Terica, and go-go dancers Emily and Stacy Goodman, who went by the name Sterling Kitty. Everybody had a different name. Joined Steve, Pandora, Tiffany, and me. Jeff Sherman and Larry Ravenswood, his real last name was Danielson, came along to operate the handheld lights, and Matthew Hopping ran sound. I felt I'd returned to Oz. I bought a little pot of blooming daffodils from the Union Square Green Market for our hotel room. Back home in Minneapolis, it would be weeks before anything blossomed. I don't recall who suggested going to the Limelight on a Thursday night. Probably Matthew, because he seemed to know a fair amount about the New York City club scene. The rest of us had never heard of it, but we wanted to publicize the gigs at Downhills and Meow Mix. So we all put on our best club/fetish wear and piled into cabs outside the Carlton Arms, which is this art hotel we stayed at and still do. The venue was an old deconsecrated church. We stood in the entrance line in the cold March darkness, staring at the floodlit stone walls. The doors opened onto a high-ceiling corridor that flickered with video monitors along the walls. We walked forward to find the bar, and the bass beat booming and drowning out all non-shouted conversation made it difficult to speak. The bar counter was tall, almost to my shoulders. When Steve said something about fish in the bar, I didn't quite follow it, and he handed me a gin and tonic. If I'd heard him properly, I would have stood on the bar rail to see the spectacle myself. There were fish in a sort of glassed-in river inside the bar. I couldn't stop seeing the footprint of the church layout, with the nave, the choir, and the transepts. I wondered what it had been like when it was an actual church. To the right was an oversized black and white checkerboard dance floor that would have been the seating for the congregation, a wide stage where the altar or chancel would have been. A DJ was on the stage playing the thump, thump, thump of high-energy dance music for the crowd of dancers that began to increase in size. The dance floor was open to the top of the vaulted ceiling, and stained glass windows looked down on it all. To me, the room lost none of its awe-inspiring power in the shift from church to nightclub. It felt solid and electrifying. So then Venus, aka Steve, and I started exploring the area instead of dancing. So we go up to the second floor and we look over it, and it still has stained glass windows and everything. And then we start moving again. The music was hard to talk over, and I gave Steve's arm a gentle squeeze to express my delight at being together in this place. Then we noticed another set of stairs to the third level, and still another short set of metal stairs, the kind you might find next to a loading dock. They led to a door. At the bottom of the stairs, a man guarded a velvet rope, keeping the area off limits. As we watched, the door at the top of the stairs opened, and two people came out, light and thrumming music behind their silhouettes. The rope opened as they came down the stairs. I got curious and walked over to the bouncer, Steve, silent and beautiful, by my side. I'm not sure if I do describe what she's wearing in the next paragraph. "What's up there?" I asked. "The VIP room," he responded, scrutinizing us. I was pretty sure I wouldn't pass that scrutiny if I'd been alone. But Steve, in his wasp-waisted corset and strappy boots, stood there patiently. I started talking to him about finding the other band members downstairs. Then the bouncer surprised us. He swung the velvet rope open. It was like discovering a secret corner of the world. The door led to another lounge, but unlike the lower levels, this space rivaled the Carlton Arms Art Hotel. The walls were art, sensuous murals, paintings, and sculptures of naked bodies that transitioned into angels and reptile forms. The style was similar to artwork I'd seen by Giger on album covers, like Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Brain Salad Surgery. He had also created the famous monster in Alien. It was such a recognizable style, the images sinuous and jagged, full of vertebrae and serpentine smoothness interspersed with vulnerable bodies. It was not what one would expect in a nightclub with drunk people milling around ready to break things. I decided they must be copies, really good copies. So we get some drinks and we go over and look at some stuff in display cases, like sculptures of weird reptilic things. And then eventually we kiss. Heads turned. There, we'd gotten their attention. More important, I had Steve's attention. We walked around, looked at the art, eventually found a cozy banquette. I still felt as if we'd sneaked into a secret club. Well, we had sneaked into a secret club. It was called the Giger Room, and by the way, it was real. Like, not copies. We leaned into each other, and Steve glowed every time someone passed with an appreciative nod to his appearance. I knew he was feeling validated, and as long as I still had his attention, it felt good to be a part of that. On some level, I suppose it validated me as well. We were in sync with each other, and I'll just stop there.
Let's hear it again for Lynette, who took us to the VIP room. It was about a year ago when I first heard our next guest read, and he held me spellbound. Ibe Kaba is an award-winning spoken word poet born and raised in Sierra Leone and Guinea. He's called Minnesota home for over half his life. So naturally, he lives in the middle of the Atlantic. Ibe is the recipient of the Midwestern Voices Award, of Jerome SASE Verb Grant, and was a Minnesota Academy Award nominee for Best Spoken Word, among other honors. He is a contributing writer to the acclaimed collection Good Time for the Truth, and like Lynette, is a member of the Sonoglyph Collective, an eclectic group of poets and musicians. Let's get ready to hear Ibe Kaba, who's taller than we women are, so he'll have to adjust the microphone.
Yeah, just a little bit taller. Hopefully I won't break this though, right? I know Tony just went through a whole lot to get it straight, and here I am trying to.
Watch that leg there, though. It's right over there.
Oh, that's true. Is this like a we podcast? Oh, there goes a video over there. I'm on camera. Ha. Didn't know that. That's good. How we doing? Good, good. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, thanks to everyone who's making this possible. Right here, as part of Poets and Pints a lot of years ago. So it's definitely a pleasure to be here. I feel like all the three groups in the Crack Walnuts, I know it seems like Crack Walnut, now it's all blended with Poets and Pints, but used to be separate. They used to have a whole poetry series here, reading in town, that was more like a couple of weeks long of poetry reading around the Twin Cities. So been part of that, and of course Bosso also. So it's nice to put them all together, and at the same time still there, you know. So like this first poem here is my latest. I'm still working on. It takes me years to finish a poem and stuff. So this is definitely a work in progress, and it's. Maybe if you remember back in at least certainly high school, when they'll give you a map with natural features on it, and you're supposed to name each of the natural features on it, like mountains and rivers and things. So it's sort of that, let me say, that inspired this poem. And it's a particular continent. A ski, 5 rivers, and a train. There is an island between 3 waters, Indian, Atlantic, and Mediterranean. It's an island of many waters, breathtaking wonders, and stories as old as the spoken word. There is snow at the belt buckle of the equator. Snow at the belt buckle of the equator, so strap on your crampons and ski down the slopes of the Atlas Mountain. On the edge of Sahara, take a camel ride into the sunset. Let Nefertiti sing you a lullaby in Giza beneath the night sky, a billion stars, all visible to the naked eyes. In the morning, feel the vibration of 10,000 stampeding wildebeest across the Serengeti. Breakfast with fishermen on the banks of Victoria. You haven't known rivers, Langston will tell you, until you look up on the Nile and see the pyramids above it. In the land of upright men, we are all Sunjata and we are ready. So row, row, row that boat with Salif Keita in the soundtrack from Senegal, slowly on the Niger, from Timbuktu down to Nigeria. If the natives tell you, nah, it's Kalakuda Republic, follow him to the shrine, bring your dancing shoes, leave your troubles behind. When you get to Cameroon, tell Roger Miller, thank you for the memories. Rest the boat, roam a bit, take in the symphony of a marketplace in Kampala, the ruins of Lalibela. There are no apples in Eden, likewise in Burundi. A view from 1,000 hills is proof when ashes rise, the shimmer in sunlight. Take the Congo, across the Congo, through the gold, diamond, and platinum mines, and remember, wealth is the people, wealth is the people, and wealth to the people. Ride the Zambezi from Angola to Mozambique, past the Great Wall of Zimbabwe, across the border. Let Yuma Sakela take you on a train ride across South Africa, past Johannesburg, her majestic skyscraper shooting like spears in the heaven. Step with the Zulu dancers. Step with the gold miners, Zulu dancers, rising like warrior ghosts in the morning mist, jump in the cool waters off the coast of Cape Town, then up rivers back to Guinea, witness the Dundumba, and realize, though the distance is wide from Tripoli to Nairobi, we drink the same river. We drink from the same river, and this land of abandoned treasures, from Madagascar to other echoes in the three waters, this kaleidoscopic land of splendor is ours to explore, cherish, and worship. I know it's new when I can look at it and still be stuttering on the line and just so it's a work in progress. Sometimes the reading is part of the writing. You know, you write it, sometimes it just doesn't flow right, then you got to go back to the paper and kind of get at least for me, the melody and the rhythm is a big part of the words, so it's coming. All right. This next one, it's an old one, but it's been a while since I read it. So it's gonna feel like new. And lots of years ago, this came to me more the what we call in poetry the refrain, and or in music the hook came to me first, then the rest I put together, just to hard of hearing. There is a fire burning in my hands and I just can't let go. I turn it this and that way, I just can't let go. There is a fire burning in my hands and I just can't let go. I turn it this and that way, I just can't let go. I took the long way to get here. Fell to the bottom of the valley, bruised my knees and elbows to get here. See? I'm in love with my demons. More than temporary restraining order, I need divine intervention. But he's playing tough love. He says, I can help it. Here we go again. It's the apple all over. He's expecting too much, and failure is my only experience. There is a fire burning in my hands, and I just can't let go. I turn it this and that way, I just can't let go. It's mind over matter, never mind, I should be stronger. I sell my mind and path for the love of it. Can't get enough of it. Walk straight to crooked places just for a taste of it. Eloquent with my excuses. I mean, if it's bad for me, why does it feel so good? If not for me, why bring it to me? Me to it. In a crowded room, we always find each other, always find our corner. It always ends the same way, and tomorrow we are right back in the future, trying desperately to reel back the past. Just yesterday, I looked in the mirror and couldn't find my face. We are taken by light in copper wires. If it cannot be scanned, gauged with the thermostat or read in a blood sample, they say, if it doesn't feel tender to the touch, it must not be real. But it's also true what they say, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is to convince the world it didn't exist. Still I insist. I feel it in my heart like a cardiac arrest. It constricts and stops blood flow to my brain, declares holy war on my nervous system, and takes my muscles captive. My willpower cowers under her spell. I become one-track minded, her track minded, track her like a hound dog until she bids me rise. Your foot is on the gas pedal, fast approaching a cliff, and you are not suicide bound. Sometimes stop is a four-letter word, impossible to execute. There is a fire burning in my hands, and I just can't let go. I turn it this and that way, I just can't let go. Deep beneath the ocean, water is in constant battle with fluidity. The toughest opponent you'll ever face is self. Some of us are in constant battle with an enemy that throws phantom blows that stink worse than a ton of bricks to the head. Self-inflicted wounds that fester and run. First you come in thinking one time, then you're done. Before you know it, it's a lifetime and you're done. Don't do it. Not for once, because the only time you stand a chance is the time before the first time, after which time it's too late. Try as hard as you may. It's hard as hell not to open the door. When she comes, you will beg, kick and scream, but like I said, you're not a patient, you're a slave to a master that not only owns your body, controls your mind, she does with it as she please. Please believe me, she doesn't mean you well. She will chew you, spit you, trample over your body from here straight to hell. I've been there, bruised my knees and elbows to get here. There is a fire burning in my hands, and I just can't let go. I turn it this and that way, I just can't let go. They say admitting a problem is the only step to finding a solution. It's the first step to finding a solution. When I sign off here, I hope the healing begins. Thank you. How am I doing on time? Good, good. So as you can tell, I write long poems, but lately I've been trying to write shorter poems and just share them on Instagram. So I'm gonna take you guys to my Instagram, share some of the poems I've shared.
Tell people what your Instagram is.
Oh, it's Ibe Kaba. You know, I was lucky to get that. I didn't have to do any kind of, other things to read. I don't think there's a lot of Ibe Kabas out there, so I was lucky.
I got into Placido pretty easy too.
What's up?
I got Placido pretty
You got that really easy too. It pays, who knew that when our parents were naming us that, having unique names will come in handy, But it's crazy. When every platform I go, I try to get email addresses. There's no Ibrahim Kaba, no variation of it available anymore. It's like, that one I have to try to be more creative. But eBay is still good. You don't say. You say, I don't feel. I bet you've never seen an octopus work, but it does. The hardest shell covers the softest core of cores. You don't carry eggs with a boxer's glove. Aren't we all the same? A little makeup and a shawl. Sure, how else must we survive the cold? Sunjata's return. I came with the rebels, resurrected ancestors, the sun in our shadows, scriptures in our pockets, a shotgun in the trunk, cowrie shells and drum beats, clap, clap, warriors dance, a porcupine in one hand, a single red rose in the other. The streets are all golden, Saharan winds blowing west, the sky's crimson red, an owl flying into the sun with a clear line to the future. It's an excerpt, I don't need to do that one. How far? If an entity like this city can so rise and sprawl in less than 200 years, imagine what is next. So this is, I get inspired a lot when I'm flying in a plane. It's I think about, I used to be very scared of flying until I became a consultant. Then I had to find a way to get used to it, right? Because I was always on the road and stuff. So now I think that fear has translated to being a little bit more philosophical. Maybe this is how I get over my fear. So I end up writing a lot when I'm on the plane. So this is one I was coming from California. That's when this was written. So hopefully that background will kind of inform you a little bit as I was looking down on Los Angeles. So the entity in this first verse stanza is Los Angeles. If an entity like this city can so rise and sprawl in less than 200 years, imagine what is next. A journey from Mali to Mecca once took weeks and months. To circumvent the planet now takes a day and few hours. Some say our smallest enemies may be our downfall, yet this battlefield is filled with carcass of mighty foes. How far are we really from taming Sahara, from a Martian pit stop, from starving off death? Another 200 years. I'll stop there. Thank you.
I'm not going to adjust the microphone because our next reader is pretty tall too. But anyway, thanks to Ibe for taking us to realms unknown. And let's have another round of applause. So I've known our next guest for years, and I can't begin to describe him as well as he does. So here goes. Scott Vetsch has bees in his bonnet, hears things wrong, which makes them right. He's a carpenter who works on old houses, a child in a man's body, a soul in exile. He likes a good story, whichever way it comes, loves cats and crows, inhabits worlds of his own making. He's afraid things aren't getting better, but hopes he's mistaken. He burns wood, craves hamburgers and eats tofu, scoffs at money, envies the contented, and drives a truck. When he's happy, he wants a beer. When he's sad, he wonders why. He knows one thing for sure. He's a writer in a post-literate world. Put your hands together for Scott Vetsch.
Thank you. It's great to see all these friends, old and not so old. But I'm old. Religious teachings. During 7th grade confirmation class, our minister described heaven and the rewards of devotion. Imagine, he said, a corporate boardroom, God sitting at the big desk in the center. Around him, desks are arranged in crescents, stretching to eternity. God places the pious and devout within sight of his desk. The less ardent persist in a sea of office furniture, dispatching memos in paradise. Only those dappled by his radiance would know what they missed. I remember asking how. If Cain and Abel were the firstborn children of the first people in creation, how Cain could run off and get married after he'd axed his brother. The pastor said there were people on earth not created in God's image. This derailed the simplicity of the whole creation deal, so I figured Adam and Eve were the first Cro-Magnons and Cain must have run off to live in lust with a tribe of Neanderthals. But before I was further instructed, even before the city could tear down Block E and disperse prostitution throughout the neighborhoods, our pastor was arrested soliciting sex from an undercover policewoman on Hennepin Avenue. He asserted it was a crusade of mercy. All he wanted her to do was get down on the floor of his car and pray with him. My take on Hollywood. I watched a movie about the Great Recession, a story of an architect and his wife struggling to build the house of their dreams. They're regular people of modest means. He's a small town kid filled with hope, and she's a waitress. They own an idyllic cottage in beautiful Southern California. The sun fills its interior. His renderings and elevations are taped to the walls, illustrating vision and dedication. The architect's wife insists he follow his dream, so they mortgage their house and they buy an empty lot on top of some Santa Monica Palisade with a view of the Pacific. They leverage the financing, they accept the risk because they have faith. We see a partially constructed postmodern castle rising from that sacred soil. Silhouettes of cranes and front-end loaders are backlit by an iconic California sunset, petrochemical totems of the American dream. Then 08 hits and real estate tanks. They work and they save their pennies in a jar. The architect stands in the driveway of a mid-century home speaking with his elderly working-class father who hands him his life savings, and we all know it will never be enough. Bottom line, find $50,000 or face foreclosure, and so like generations of American heroes before them, they take his father's savings, drive through the desert, arrive in Las Vegas, and bet everything on the roulette wheel. The next morning, $25,000 lies spread across their hotel bed. They count it, and to avow the miracle, they fuck on top of all that money. And I remember what Mom used to say, how you should never put money in your mouth because it's the manifestation of a social disease. You never know who handled it and didn't wash their hands. If only Mom knew how things were today. Or maybe it was always like this. Maybe it's a traditional thing. Maybe kings actually did fuck on mountains of gold. Or maybe serfs just believed they did. And that became their greatest aspiration. Or maybe that's really what it's all about. Anybody know what movie that is? I can't either. The Grizzly Adams of advertising. In an era before logos were art, plastered across every shirt, jacket, and cap, back when all that unclaimed ad space was wilderness, vast, and unexploited, Dad noticed me wearing a t-shirt from a car dealership. Across my chest, the logo read, baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. How much they paying you to wear that shirt he asked. Whenever Dad asked a question like that, I got pissed off. What I wanted to say was, fuck you. I said, nothing. Why would they pay me? It's a shirt. I got it for free. That's prime advertising space, Dad said. It covers your heart. They should pay you to wear it. They gave me a shirt, I replied. I didn't have to buy it. That isn't enough, Dad said. Thanks. It's called ruin value. The Nazis designed their buildings to possess a quality defined by ruin value. When the 1,000-year Reich was destroyed, the ruins of their monuments would persist, like the Great Pyramid or the Parthenon. No rusted rebar snagling from piles of crumbled concrete. It would be marble and granite, designed for an afterlife more beautiful in death. The monuments of capitalism have no pretensions. A scattering of strip malls abandoned at the slightest downturn. Archaeologically, our containers are what endures. To-go boxes and plastic pop bottles, the arrowheads and war clubs of our people. Wading up an inaccessible trout stream, I spy a battered beer can glinting among the cobbles of the riverbed. I can't read the label, but I know what it says. I can sing the jingle. On the bank beside me, a wildflower reaches skyward. I don't know its name. Delroy Calhoun said, the only thing he learned from his dad was, if you gotta eat a frog, don't spend a lot of time looking at it. If you gotta eat a lot of frogs, eat the big one first. His last one, called The History of What I Know. Invasions, glut, tenderness and love, tom-toms pounding like a ragged heart. It always worried Grandma, those orange fires blinking in the darkness beyond the tree line, beneath the forest's shaggy shoulders. Napkins in our laps, we watched them flicker from the gods of plenty all-you-can-eat buffet, betting on the next joust or reciting another beer hall prayer. Human sacrifices strung like Christmas ornaments from the limbs of our favorite trees. Mom was a dancer, a real stump grinder. I played hockey on crisp January nights. You can't blame your gods for everything that goes wrong. Prosperity rides us roughshod, but like the priest said to the clog salesman, don't you have something with a little less soul? Drinking coffee in the cafe that used to be a florist, kitty corner from the funeral home rebranded as a tech design firm. Mortality was once the reigning industry. Now it's indolence. Convinced death has moved on, the toboggan king sings from his bully pulpit after sledding every hill in town. In dog beers, I've only had 3, but whiskey tells me who I am, sends me out to make friends with the dark. My neighborhood has been recast by the pleasure class. Forest bathers, rainmakers, and body shamers, snake charming essential oil reps, and dog walking stay-at-home inner child activists, a destruction collective choking out anything that claims sky or stars, anyone not paying rent to someone else, anything outside its container. Truth lies beyond sponging grease off your pizza or putting the chairs in their places. On the fairy tale network, it's a rule. The hero must be of noble birth. Fallen is best, but they gotta come from money. It's a reinstatement fantasy, and everybody wants to be the prodigal son. Korean War fighter pilot, underground genius Arthur Bell declaims from his table at the quarterback club one riotous idea: the circular airport. Bryce Landis, another wizardy silver-haired veteran of that very war, paints signs for grocery stores and writes revolutionary screeds. I could be your lapdog in this cultural experiment, at your door when you rattle my gravy train, dreaming of the meals they served back when Carhartt made clothes for people instead of dogs. Snap on a leash and we could take long walks together, discuss Vanity Fair and Charlton Heston, Benjamin Britten and Curious George. I could be your private garden gnome, sawdust on my collar, hermitage behind your garage, wading through kleptocracies of t-shirts and tote bags, rustically aware. Eyes trained on the tree line, I see my spirit explode like a cattail swept away on a riptide of to-go containers containing everything I possibly can. Thank you.
Keep it going for Scott. All right, so we're gonna take a little break here, about 10-minute break, but first, like I said at the top of the show, we're part of the League of Minnesota Poets and Cracked Walnut, which means we are a nonprofit. So we live off of tips, essentially. So on the table, if you want to donate via QR code, you can. That's on the table there via PayPal. Otherwise, I'm going to pass around this box. If you have something, throw it in there. If you don't, no big deal. It's a free show. And then we'll come back in 10 minutes and we'll do the open mic. So if you were just here to see Bosso Poetry, please stay and watch the open mic because these people want to perform for you. So I will see you in 10 minutes. Hello, hello.
Hello. Is this the one? Hello.
All right, so as we like to do, if we have time, is we like to swing into the open mic time. And with the open mic, we have just a couple of rules because of time. One, just do only one poem, please. And two, make sure it's 2 minutes or less, please. Because that will allow us to try to get through this list and still have time to clean up and not make the bartender stay past 9 or too much past 9. Okay, so with that being true, Scott, give me a number 1 through 7.
Me, how about 3?
Charlie's up first.
Make my way through the jungle. All right. All right, here we go. No, it's good. All right. This is one out of my book, and it's this is we've mentioned ancestors, grandparents, and so forth. This is about my grandmother and music. My grandmother was a music teacher in Iowa. She actually, when she was about 15, she went off to Northwestern University all by herself and got a degree. This might kind of inform you a little, inform you a little bit about what kind of a person she was. Called About the Music. All I wanted was yes. Jazz is music, after all, and good music. And at that, and even though every note isn't written down, and even though every performance isn't the same, it still takes the same imagination and skill and courage. You said, my 3 did it all 200 years before yours drew his first breath. And that's the way it went for a long time. Those long attempts to convince you your music was not the only music. My Brubeck against your Bach and Beethoven and Brahms. My world was still forming, unmodulated, a tune played differently every time. Your world was classic, symmetrical, ordered. Grandchildren are no reason to change this. Then I got your letter confessing a tradition, not analysis, influenced you. It was another time and another subject altogether. I thought I heard a saxophone singing the spaces between words. Not now, even that time is so long ago, I can't remember the exact notes, though I still have the words and the spaces. Jazz resolution to a classic fugue. I miss you like that sometimes. I am blessed like that sometimes.
What am I going to do with you? Okay. Next up, Irene, give me a number 1 through 6.
2.
Matt. There you are. Here comes Matt.
This has been a long time.
Not for me. I was just up there.
Not for you. Minneapolis, how you doing? The last time I did this was 1992, the Viking Bar in Five Corners.
Really?
Yeah. Good to see you again, man. You want the last one I did there? All right. This one changes depending on the day of the week. Originally it was called Thursday USA, but today is Wednesday, so it's Wednesday USA. The wind screams like a chorus of electric monkeys. Out on the playgrounds, children rehearse murders, and the night crawls closer like a black cat stoned on stealth. Streetlights wake with a buzzing yawn, and in living rooms, families digest their supper and television blood. The night air tightens as thieves and lovers rendezvous. A dog barks, a car growls down the street, and somewhere a soul slips into silence.
All right. How about Venus? Give me number 1 through 5.
5.
5. That is Kathy. I would go that way. Don't be Charlie.
Nobody can be Charlie.
Right.
I'm vertically challenged.
Oh, hey, let me do that for you. I have one job. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
End of the line. After the eulogy and lift me up on angel's wings, the scripture and the sermon, the prayers and benediction, a grandson wearing a suit and tie stepped to the platform altar and plugged in his guitar. The mega church had mega speakers and those mega-sized TV screens so the pastor could be up close and personal with every sinner in the house. But there was less than 100 in the pews. We had a good view of the young man's face when he threw down Folsom Prison Blues. It was a version the man in black would have tipped a dark hat to. He dug deep for the low notes, struck them with gravel, stoked the engine rhythm in a chuffing beat that sent the mourners foot tapping, heads nodding through the riffs across musical bridges, the yearning baritone filling the sanctuary like bar car smoke, slipping over trestles, leaning around the curves, whistle fading. Memories faded to grow smaller with the distance, knowing we had to move on, even though we felt the lonesome call. I never took my uncle for country, and he served no time. Maybe he just felt lucky to be free.
Okay. Mom, 1 through 4.
4.
4. That is Tom. All the way to the stage, all the way to the stage. Come on, keep clapping.
I do that every time. So this piece needs a ton of introduction, but I'm not gonna give it that, I'm just gonna read it. It's part of a longer piece. This is called The Sun Risen. I awoke to the chambered screams, to a child in a shaking freeze, the way one becomes lucid, then loses his wild wasted wings and falls through his own shadow. I lived with my son, and he was here this week and not the next, this week and not the last. This weakness is all I have. I went to his room and held him. I wanted to consume the hellish fantasy that finally compelled him to confuse me for the demon for which he was so terrified. Therein lies the reason he was lying in my bed, trying to remember why his only venture into darkness had his father as the star when he stopped, Crying in my arms, I wondered what had wandered into thoughts that was obviously darker than the locks of the darkness I had never let him watch, and in all of this, I was honest when I asked him what he saw, or what he wandered into, or why he wanted it to stop. He said I had a nightmare, the worst I've ever had. You left me, Dad, but I had never left him. I was here when his mother wasn't. I was a broken well. I had been both to hell and never to the summit, but I was here, and I loved him. Something I do not utter lightly. Every other night he knew it, but it was frighteningly useless with his nightmare right there to confuse him. I asked, where did I go? He said, I don't know. So I asked, have I ever left you? And he said, only in the dream. And he may not know it, but I am broken at the seams, fighting with his mother for my right not to leave. How could his imagination wander in a patient slumber that I could, like a quaking thunder? I am good. I look away to sunder, just to ask again, where did I go? He was in my mind. He could see the pain inside my soul. He was the keeper time. He said somewhere away from the world.
Madison, 1 through 3.
Let's go with 3.
3 is Allie.
About a plane crash in my little small town. Happened 2 years ago this month. 1M20. 2 years ago, 3 people died in a doctor killer, the headlines read. I heard the plane go out overhead and the sirens opened their mouths to sing a gruesome tune. Passing the site every day, I wonder if there's others who do the same, only to say their names, Jacob, Sarah, and James, in the field off Rose Street that still remains. And in a little cafe down the way, the song plays on. I can see clearly now that the rain has gone, as a storm forms overhead. Bikers squabble to beat the squall. Mothers cover their young, rushing as fathers hold the door, unaware of how fleeting storms and life can be. Because when you hear death, not of death, when you hear death, the dying, the desperate, and their silent prayers, the final release, the ringing and singing, the years of silence, you cannot run from the rain or to cover your young.
Next up is Victoria. Not the first.
Yeah. At least I didn't trip this time. All right. The chest of a younger grief. I took the word tight and pinned it to my lips, while I wore your hands around my ankles. For entire winters, I stayed numb and anchored to a story. I will make a show of my next life from the words of my actions, leaving by the neck of a sleeve, pulled to the chest of a younger grief, having almost gotten away in time. We grow more honest, multiply the unknown for how it might serve our piss-bag futures. Hoarding All these hours of miscalculations in ships toward the leeway and courage it took you to let me go as if I didn't belong to you for life. We make the best of a long situation by the way of the dog and not naming what it is we ought to say. Every day, a new promise in tiptoe. I don't know how to do this any better than you. I once cut a man straight out of my life until we became strangers. Then one night, I heard him laughing in an auditorium full of people, and the band drowned. Thank you.
I do that just to tell you that I don't like microphones. Okay, I'm gonna go last. Hi, I'm Tony. This is my newest piece. I just finished it. I'm not sure if it's done. That's why I put the air quote. Okay, it's called Processing. And what it's about is, I just learned that in January I was diagnosed with autism. So here we go. There wasn't a diagnosis for me. It was the 80s, where you opened the door and you threw your kids outside, ride or hide or race the sun back home. Nobody knew I wasn't processing. In high school, when every class is hard, you seem to find ways to make it easy. When the teacher says, "What's the square root of 81?" I was still wondering if I'd ever seen a square-shaped root. I was still wondering if other people thought about roots in math class. I was still wondering. Nobody knew I wasn't processing. As an adult, in all my relationships, there always came a moment where her emotions, valid as they were, simply caused me to shut down or shut off. I didn't understand the situation. I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't fulfill their expectations. And nobody knew I wasn't processing. So damn near 50 in my everyday life, I have a diagnosis under my belt. I have an explanation, and I'm still saddened by misunderstandings. I'm still overthinking underwhelming situations. I'm still unfamiliar to my family. This will continue to paint my soul a color that will always feel weird. It will always frustrate me to not have the answer, even though I know I'm not really processing. So, before I do the usual close, and thank you for the applause, thank you. Before I do the usual close, I'm going to bring Irene back up. Look at this. To thank her people for coming tonight, since it's her show. And then I'll do my normal close. Tell people when Bosso is and all that stuff too.
Oh, okay, I will. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
And thank you to Marjorie, Lynette, Ibe, and Scott. You were really tremendous. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for inviting us. Thanks to Sisyphus Brewing for being our host too, as well. And thanks to all of you for coming tonight. Please come to Bosso Poetry. The next one is first Wednesday in September 6th, I believe. Yes, and it is from 9:30 till midnight. There is not only poetry, but there's music, and there's a lot of life in the bar, and maybe a little too much life, but hey, we deal with it. And
a person might turn into a pumpkin.
yeah, you might turn into a pumpkin. I have a few times, and it's not a pleasant. No, it's okay. It's all right. Hey, please come out, and thank you for being here. And if you want to know anything about Bosso, you can talk to Scott. He was there from the beginning, and Lynette has been there. They've been both there with Bosso much longer than I have even. Okay, Good night.
331 Club in Minneapolis, Northeast Minneapolis. So, and one more round of applause for Irene. So, this is very important. No, it's not, but I think it is. Next month is our 100th show. 100 shows. We kept it virtually during the pandemic, but we've been going for 100 shows. So, we have on the docket, from Kansas City, we have Sean Pavey. From the Twin Cities, we've got Kari Jackson, we've got Shane Hawley, we've got Phaedra Sheridan, and we got Joe Davis. So be here for that show. There is no charge, but there is a link in our Facebook page for an Eventbrite page to get tickets. The only reason why it is I'm trying to see if we can fill up the joint. So get a ticket, it's free. It's always a free show. And it's on, what's the date? Just go there. September 20th. September 20th, 7 p.m. We are doing a 3-hour show. So we'll end at 10 p.m. So, get your naps in and all that stuff. And Button Poetry will be here with a table because a lot of the poets on the docket are going to be Button Poetry people. So they'll be here with a table selling their books. They're also going to film it in a more professional way than a laptop on a table. So that's going to be neat. And that's it. So this has been Poets and Pints number 99. I am Tony Placido, and I will see you next month. Thank you. Yeah, everybody please take your